All right, so personality tests, those quizzes you see everywhere online, and the ones employers just love to use. We're
Mm.
diving deep into how those actually work today,
Okay.
because I know you're prepping for a job that uses them.
I am.
And let's be real, those things can be kind of nerve-wracking.
They can be a little intimidating.
Right. So to help us out, we've got excerpts from Perfect Personality Profiles by Helen Baron.
Oh, yeah. Barron's book is a great resource because she really breaks down the science behind these tests and helps separate fact from fiction,
Yeah, exactly. We're going beyond the BuzzFeed quizzes here, folks. We're
Right.
looking at the real deal. So by the end of this deep dive,
Okay.
you'll not only be ready to tackle that personality test, but you'll also understand how your personality impacts your work style, how you fit into a company's culture,
Right.
and even how to showcase your strengths as a candidate.
It's about taking all this information and really using it to your advantage.
Yeah.
Both in understanding yourself better and presenting yourself in the best possible light.
So let's start with the basics. Why are employers so interested in these personality tests in the first place? It's not like they're trying to uncover some big secret, right?
Right. It's not about digging up dirt on you.
Okay.
It's about predicting your work behavior,
Okay.
which is much more important to a potential employer than you might think. And get this.
Okay.
Research actually shows that these tests can be even more effective than interviews alone when it comes to predicting job performance.
Hold on. More effective than an actual interview. I always thought face-to-face was like the gold standard.
Seems logical, but interviews can be surprisingly unreliable.
Really?
They're susceptible to all sorts of biases,
Okay.
even unconscious ones.
Interesting.
Barron gives this example in her book about an interviewer being swayed by a candidate's hair color or accent, things that have absolutely nothing to do with their ability to do the job.
Wow. So these tests are trying to create a more level playing field?
But
Then taking some of that subjectivity out of the equation?
it's about creating a fairer process for both the employer and the candidate.
Okay.
They get more objective data, and you get a chance to shine based on your actual personality, not someone's gut feeling in an interview.
That makes a lot of sense. But it brings up another question, like, what exactly is personality when we're talking about it in this context? It's more than just being likable or outgoing, right?
Oh, absolutely. When psychologists talk about personality, they're looking at your typical patterns of behavior and emotions,
Okay.
the consistent things that make you you, and how that plays out in work situations.
So not just how you might act on a good day or a bad day.
Right
It's
on.
about those core traits that define you.
Precisely. And within that, there's an important distinction between traits and types that we should explore.
Okay, break that down for me. What's the difference?
Think of traits like a volume knob.
Okay.
You can be high or low or somewhere in between on different characteristics.
Wow.
The classic example is extroversion versus introversion.
Right.
Most people aren't at the extremes.
Right.
They fall somewhere along that spectrum.
So I might be more introverted than my best friend, but we're both still within a normal range.
Exactly. Types, on the other hand, try to put people into rigid categories.
Gotcha.
Barron mentions the four humors in her book.
Oh, yeah.
Sanguine, choleric, melancholic, and phlegmatic as an early example of this.
I remember learning about those in history class.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see how those early ideas have evolved into the more nuanced personality tests we see today.
Exactly. Most modern personality tests focus on those volume knobs of traits because they allow for much more individual variation, which is critical when you're trying to understand someone's personality.
Makes sense now. How do they actually measure all of this? And more importantly, how are they going to be measuring me in this job I'm applying for?
Well, we've already touched on one method, interviews,
Right.
but as we discussed, those have their limitations.
Right. All those biases and first impressions that can totally color the interviewer's perception.
Exactly. And unstructured interviews where the interviewer doesn't follow a set format are particularly bad at predicting good employees. Structured interviews are a little better, but they're still not foolproof.
Okay, so what else is out there? What are they going to throw at me?
That brings us to the wonderful world of psychological tests.
Ooh.
But like interviews, there are different types. You've probably heard of projective tests, like those ink blot tests.
Oh, yeah. Those are the ones where you say what you see in those random shapes, right? I always thought those seemed a bit subjective.
They are, and they're not commonly used for job applications.
Ooh.
So you can breathe a sigh of relief.
Glad to hear it. What about questionnaires? Those seem a little more relevant, this whole job prep thing.
You're on the right track. Questionnaires are the most common type used in employment settings. But here's the key. Professionally developed questionnaires are completely different from those fun, quizzes you see in magazines or online.
Okay, that's good to know. I was about to start practicing with those BuzzFeed quizzes.
Right.
But I guess I'll hold off.
Those are great for a laugh,
Mm.
but they're not going to prepare you for a job-related personality test.
No, you're right.
The ones used for employment are based on years of research and are designed to be reliable and minimize bias as much as possible.
So there's real science behind these things.
Absolutely.
That's reassuring. At least I thought they might just be pulling questions out of the hat.
There's a lot more to it than that.
Okay.
And understanding the different types of questions they use can help you feel much more prepared and confident when you're taking the test.
Oh, okay, I'm ready. Bring on the questions.
All right, let's do it. So let's dive into those different question types you're going to see on these tests.
Right, bring it on. I'm a learn by doing kind of person, so give me some examples.
Excellent. That's a great approach.
Okay.
You'll likely encounter a few different types, each designed for a specific purpose. Let's start with rating scales.
Right.
These are the ones where you're asked to agree or disagree with a statement or indicate how often you do something, or how accurately a description fits you.
Yeah, I've seen those before. They seem pretty straightforward.
They are on the surface, but they're carefully crafted to tap into specific traits. Baron's book lists a bunch of examples.
Okay.
One is, when I meet a new person, I am usually the one to start the conversation. You'd rate how accurate that is for you on a scale.
That makes sense. It seems like a subtle way to figure out if you're more introverted or extroverted.
Right.
What other kinds of questions are there?
Another common one is forced choice,
Okay.
where you have to pick between two options. Sometimes those options are opposites, like work independently versus work on a team.
Okay.
And sometimes they're just different preferences.
So it's like, would you rather have a quiet night in or go out to a party?
Yeah.
But in a work-related way.
Exactly. It forces you to reveal your tendencies, even if you're somewhere in between, and some questionnaires use wording that's designed to be more subtle,
Okay.
making it harder to fake good or fake bad.
Right. But what about those people who are really good at faking it? Can these questionnaires really catch them?
That's a great question. It's tricky, but these questionnaires are designed with that in mind. They use various techniques like incorporating questions that are less obvious to try and get a more genuine picture of your personality. Think of it like a detective trying to get to the truth.
Okay.
They'll ask questions from different angles, look for inconsistencies, and use their expertise to piece together the puzzle.
That's fascinating. So all of this information then feeds into models like the Big Five personality traits, right?
Absolutely.
I've heard of that, but honestly, I need a refresher.
Okay.
What is it again?
So the Big Five is a common and well-researched model that you'll likely encounter in these tests. And it can be really helpful for understanding yourself, even beyond just taking a test.
Okay.
Essentially, it breaks down personality into 5 core dimensions. Openness to experience conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and emotional stability.
Okay, 5 big words. Let's start with openness to experience. What does that actually mean in terms of real-life behavior? Paint me a picture.
So someone high in openness is curious, imaginative, and enjoys novelty and learning new things.
Okay.
They're often much more adaptable and open to change.
Okay.
Think of someone who's always eager to try a new restaurant, travel to a new country, or pick up a new hobby.
So someone who embraces new experiences and is always looking to expand their horizons.
Exactly.
Right.
On the other hand, someone low in openness tends to prefer routine and familiarity.
Okay.
They might stick to the same restaurants, activities, and ways of doing things.
Gotcha.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a different way of approaching the world.
Right. I can see how this trait could really impact a job fit. Someone who thrives on new challenges might not be happy in a role that's very routine-driven.
Right.
And vice versa.
You're absolutely right. Baron makes a great point about that in her book.
Okay.
She highlights how understanding your level of openness can help you find a career path that's naturally fulfilling for you.
That's a good point. Okay, what about conscientiousness?
All right, so conscientiousness is all about being organized, responsible, and detail-oriented.
Okay.
This is the get stuff done trait.
Gotcha.
High conscientiousness means you're likely punctual, reliable, and good at following through on commitments.
So basically, the person everyone wants in their group project,
Yes.
they're the ones who keep everyone on track and make sure things get done on time.
Exactly. But wouldn't you know, there can actually be a downside to being too high in conscientiousness.
Oh, wait, really? Isn't being organized and reliable always a good thing?
It's definitely valuable, but taken to the extreme. People high in this trait can sometimes be a bit too rigid or perfectionistic. This can be a problem in roles that require flexibility and adaptability.
That's interesting. So like most things, it's about finding that sweet spot,
Yeah.
the right balance for the job.
Precisely. Now onto the trait we've been talking about all along, extroversion.
Okay, hit me.
We've already touched on this, but it's worth highlighting some key points.
All right, tell me everything. I'm ready to learn more about the extrovert-introvert spectrum.
As we discussed, extroverts are energized by social interaction. They tend to be outgoing, assertive, and enjoy being the center of attention. They might thrive in roles where they're interacting with people all day,
Right.
like sales or customer service.
Okay.
Introverts, on the other hand, recharge their batteries through solitude.
Okay.
They're often much more reserved and thoughtful and might prefer roles that involve more independent work.
So Barron's book talks about how this trait impacts not just your work style, but also how you approach things like networking and job interviews, right?
Absolutely.
Got it.
For instance, an extrovert might naturally excel at networking events and feel very comfortable in a job interview setting.
Right.
An introvert might need to put more conscious effort into those aspects,
Okay.
but both can be equally successful. It's about understanding your strengths and tailoring your approach.
I love that it's not about trying to be someone you're not.
Right.
It's about playing to your strengths and finding strategies that work for you.
Exactly. Now let's move on to agreeableness.
Okay, is this one just about being nice?
It's a little more nuanced than that. Agreeableness is about being cooperative, empathetic, and compassionate.
Okay.
People high in agreeableness tend to be team players, good at resolving conflicts, and generally focused on maintaining harmony.
So they're the people you want on your team when you're working on a collaborative project.
Exactly. It sounds like an essential trait for almost any workplace.
It does.
It can be. But like with conscientiousness, too much agreeableness can be a problem in certain roles.
Really?
For instance, someone who always tries to please everyone might struggle in a leadership position where they need to make tough decisions that might not make everyone happy.
Right. Makes sense. It's about understanding the context and finding the right balance again.
Exactly. All right, last one. Emotional stability.
Ran on.
This one might seem pretty self-explanatory,
Okay.
but there's more to it than meets the eye.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Emotional stability is about how well you handle stress, pressure, and challenging situations.
Mm.
Think of it as your ability to stay calm and level-headed when things get tough. People high in emotional stability tend to be resilient and not easily rattled.
Mm.
They're the people who can stay focused and make sound decisions even when everyone around them is losing their cool.
So basically, the people you want on your side during a crisis.
Exactly. They can weather the storm and help others stay calm too.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, someone low in emotional stability might be more prone to anxiety mood swings or feeling overwhelmed easily.
Okay. And how does this play out in a work context?
Imagine a high-pressure job with tight deadlines, like a live television producer
Okay.
or an emergency room doctor.
Right.
Someone with high emotional stability is going to be able to handle that stress much better than someone who's easily flustered.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So the Big Five really gives employers a snapshot of how you operate under pressure, how you interact with others, and your overall work style. It's like a
Yeah.
personality cheat sheet.
It is, and it's not just about employers using it to assess you. Understanding these traits can help you understand yourself better, play to your strengths, and choose career paths that align with your natural tendencies.
So it's not just about getting the job.
Right.
It's about finding a job that you'll actually thrive in, a job that plays to your strengths. That's a game changer.
I couldn't have said it better myself, but keep in mind the Big Five is just one model.
Right.
There are other things these questionnaires might measure that are relevant to work.
Like what? Give me a sneak peek. What else might they be looking for?
Well, for instance, some questionnaires assess your competencies,
Mm-hmm.
which are basically skills applied to job performance.
Yeah.
Things like problem solving, teamwork, communication, leadership.
Right. So not just personality traits, but your ability to actually do things, to use your skills in a work setting.
Exactly. And then there's emotional intelligence, which is more than just being nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's about understanding and managing emotions effectively, both your own and those of others.
So like being able to read a room, knowing when to speak up and when to listen,
Yeah.
and being able to empathize with others.
It's a valuable skill in almost any workplace, but especially in roles involving leadership or teamwork.
Totally. What else? What other secrets are you going to reveal?
Some questionnaires try to figure out what motivates you,
Okay.
what drives you to succeed.
Hmm.
Is it achievement, power, affiliation,
Yeah.
competition, autonomy?
Okay.
Different things motivate different people. And finding a job that aligns with your core motivators can lead to much greater job satisfaction.
Right. It's all about finding that perfect fit.
Exactly.
I bet companies are also interested in your values, what's important to you in a workplace.
Absolutely. Your values impact company culture fit. If your values clash with a company's bonus,
Yeah.
it's unlikely to be a good match no matter how skilled you are.
Makes sense.
For example, if you value work-life balance and a company has a culture of long hours and weekend work, it's probably not going to be a good fit.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. So we've got personality traits, competencies, emotional intelligence, motivation, values, anything else?
One last thing, some questionnaires touch on interests, which is less about your inherent personality and more about what you like to do. This can be helpful for career exploration,
Uh-huh.
but it's not usually the primary focus in job-related tests.
Okay, so now that we know all of this stuff they're measuring, how do employers actually use this information? Do they have some secret formula or algorithm?
It's not quite as mysterious as all that. Personality questionnaires can be used in a couple of ways.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's for early screening, where they're trying to quickly weed out extreme mismatches.
So like if I'm applying for a sales job and my personality profile screams hermit,
Right.
they might move on to the next candidate.
Exactly. It's not personal, it's just about finding the right fit.
Okay.
But more often, personality tests are used at a later stage in the selection process.
And what happens then? Do they have a spreadsheet where they're looking for specific scores on certain traits?
Sometimes, yes, they might be looking for certain traits that are particularly important for the role. For example, a customer service role might require high agreeableness and emotional stability, while a leadership role might prioritize conscientiousness and extroversion.
Hmm.
But it's not always about quantitative data. Sometimes it's more qualitative. They might use your profile to get a feel for your style, and then use that to guide their interview questions.
So it's like having a conversation starter.
Yeah,
They use the test results to get a better understanding of who you are and what makes you tick.
that's a great way to put it, and it highlights why being authentic in your answers is so important. If you try to game the system, it's likely to backfire.
Right, because then your answers won't match up with what you say in the interview or even how you actually behave on the job.
Exactly. So now that you've got all this insider information, what's your strategy for test day?
Well, based on what we've discussed, I'd say honesty is key. There's no use trying to be someone I'm not.
Right.
They'll see right through it.
I completely agree. Trying to game the system rarely works.
Right.
Also, remember to think about the work context. How do you behave at work, not just in general?
That's a great point. My weekend self might be a lot different from my Monday morning self.
Exactly.
I'm definitely more introverted when I'm not in work mode.
Exactly. And here's a pro tip. Don't overthink it often. Your first instinct is the best day. Go with your gut.
Solid advice. Anything else I should keep in mind?
Yes, if the employer offers feedback on your results, take them up on it. It's a gold mine of self-awareness.
Okay.
Use it to refine your job search strategy, your interview skills, and even your long-term career development.
Yeah.
It can be really valuable to get that outside perspective.
This has been so insightful. I feel way more prepared to tackle that personality test now. And honestly, I've learned some things about myself that I can apply even beyond just this job application.
That's the beauty of these tools. They can be incredibly helpful for self-discovery and personal growth.
Okay, so we've unpacked this whole thing about personality questionnaires.
We have.
They're powerful tools, but now I know what to expect. It's not just about filling in those bubbles.
Right.
It's about painting a picture of my work self.
Yeah.
And that's actually pretty cool.
It is. And remember, there's no one right personality.
Yeah.
It's all about finding the best fit for you.
That takes the pressure off. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about being authentically you and finding a workplace where you can thrive.
Exactly. Authenticity and alignment, both for you and for the company. That's the recipe for success.
This book also mentions dark side personality traits.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that for a second. Could understanding your own weaknesses actually be an advantage in this job? It's something to ponder as you prepare.
That's such a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Perhaps a topic for another deep dive.
Hmm.
There's always more to learn about ourselves and how we interact with the world.
Until next time.